Next. So imagine fences, right? Little fences. Behind the fences, you've got some small things, but I keep tripping over them. On one hand, it's logical and clear why this is done, right? So that when I'm once again cornered by a crowd of mobs in the game, I think I'm going to escape. But unfortunately, I don't. And inevitably, I die, respawn, watch the reward and all that, right? But this doesn't make me love the developer anymore. To me, the controls didn't actually seem super responsive. Joystick movements, so the character is running to the right. Then I want to steer him to the left. So it feels like the joystick sensitivity is a little bit lacking. So I associate it with the animations, likely from stock, correct. Well, some polygonal ones. Maybe there's some foot sliding going on. So maybe try working a bit on the animation with the joystick itself. It might become a bit more enjoyable. That's the feeling I was specifically missing. Considering that in Archero, back in probably 2019, I played through 11 full dungeons, and I made a game similar to yours and similar to Archero. Unfortunately, it didn't take off, but that's another story. We won't be discussing it. But we actually focus quite a lot on the controls, and it seems like there's room for improvement here. What to do about it? Again, this is subjective, and as I understand it, or perhaps maybe I'm not quite right in understanding that you kind of... So the control settings are roughly the same for Android and iOS.
I forget what's on iOS. We haven't released it in a while.
Yeah, but I'm playing on iOS, so it's important. I'm specifically talking about iOS. I haven't installed it on Android. So that's what I felt was missing in this part. That's the first kind of major point. The second, when producing games that are quite similar, and as I did on a similar project, in my professional experience, I always and consistently drew a circle. Well, you see, not Mikhail actually, the one with the defeat. So, I'll try to explain why. So what's the point of this? What do a player want? I really love games like this. Well, I don't know. Maybe I've spent 100 hours or something on the game. There's some damage radius. Why do I need it? First, to understand the range of my weapon, such as... Second, to know what kind of safety margin I have. Third, with the help of this radius, which is around the player, you can slightly manipulate the player in terms of selling content. So basically, the player sees that this pistol has a small range, right? And the other pistol has a slightly larger range, increasing the chance that you'll offer the player something, and then they'll see this offer and make a conversion. It might be more interesting to them, possibly higher. Again, it's subjective, but as a player, I want to understand the distance I can shoot. You have weapons of different classes: shotgun, pistol, club, automatic rifle, and all that, right? So, well, I've literally spent half my life making shooters, mobile ones. And for me, that's a pretty important point. So the weapon, as we said, is like an AT key, right? So I just want to see what my weapon is indeed truly capable of. And if we continue talking about weapons, I probably missed a bit of the trail effect. So the trail effect is a bit weak, slightly. Well, I mean, yeah, especially probably the shotgun. I didn't have that association that I was holding something powerful in my hands, you know? So I occasionally hold something powerful in my hands, but I wanted something even more powerful, you know? And again, if we go a bit further about weapons, I was really looking forward to getting a submachine gun. I got it, and I went to kill zombies. Yeah, it's important. I haven't progressed that much. I've only played for 3 days. I got stuck on the fourth one, but out of curiosity, I went back in a few times. So in total, well, I don't know, maybe I went through like about 20 waves altogether. Well, to some extent, and just as soon as I got the submachine gun, I really somehow immediately started missing shots. Like I began to miss. It seems to me that quite honestly, about half of my shots were unfortunately missing. So overall, I had the following feeling: I got the submachine gun, now I'm going to crush these zombies. That would be cool. And I immediately missed half the shots. Maybe I didn't pay attention carefully, or perhaps there's some skill, or maybe I chose the wrong skill that somehow increases accuracy. At that specific moment, I was unable to level up that weapon. That's, well, regarding the weapons. But I like that there are different weapons, and there's quite a lot of them. Leveling up, makes it cool. But I would like to still emphasize this point, well, let us say circle, the radius and the damage radius. Overall, I like the pattern, the behavior pattern of the mobs, except for a couple of moments Well, for example, there are bosses. For example, that boss with the shield. I wait while he runs after me. He stops. I unload a clip into him. That's all cool. That's super. It's kind of predictable. So it's great when the behavior of the monsters, like the pattern, becomes predictable. Well, or they're completely predictable. And I watched how he moved, figured out what to do with him, chose my strategy, and started defeating everyone. The only thing I felt was missing, as the guys mentioned, was some kind of color differentiation depending on behavior, like hypothetically, the psychotype or archetype of the mob. For example, those that run fast, you'd want them to stand out, probably as more dangerous compared to the regular ones. Like if these are blue, those could perhaps have a bit of a slightly red tint, or I don't know, indeed have a red TV on their head, like in the old Plants vs. Zombies, that funny fish guy. So I like those kinds of moments overall. There's quite a large and interesting variety of mobs. I really like the guy with all the explosives the most, but honestly, it definitely looks like both the explosives and, like candy, like a red and white candy. Absolutely.
It's New Year's.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, cool. And he runs up to me, and I'm intrigued. In this behavior, I indeed also lacked the understanding that he would explode. So, what do I mean? There are some mobs in the game that explode either like this or after death, such as creepers. In my opinion, the player definitely needs to be signaled somehow, so I have the chance to run away from him. Yeah, also,
We kind of actually made it so that we even really added particles to the dynamite that fly out in different directions, but they're still very small. You can't really see them.
Yeah, it's just that there are a lot of mobs there, and he approaches among the other mobs. And you know what? I thought maybe it's because they all have this TV for a head, so this head itself is like a big TV too. They all blend in. Even if you're holding that dynamite in your hands, you just don't pay attention to it.
that's why I'm suggesting a slight and subtle color gradation for this box. Exactly the TV. Well, like the boxes, the others.
Maybe, yeah, because the TV really draws a lot of attention.
That's cool. At the same time, despite the fact that, look, the particles are made nicely, honestly, I really, really like it. The only thing is that in this whole color scheme, it doesn't take into account that some particles should be more, let's say, bright, acidic, and intimidating, while others should be regular, mundane, right? So I didn't even notice at first that these mobs would explode at all. Just another thing, really, joystick itself, size of joystick. It seems like there are two options: show the joystick or don't show the joystick. But this joystick, well, it's extremely tiny, like really, really small.
A fat finger, you know?
Yeah, right. On iOS, it's like this. You can't even see it under half a finger. It feels like you'd want something a bit, I don't know, actually more substantial. So that, well, for me, the joystick is an anchor on the screen. And when I've anchored my finger, I'll probably most likely move it like this. And if I've definitely likely settled, I'll tap here, here, and here. So it's all on such a subjective level. Next, and actually, it's a cool idea not to shift, but to combine Archero, Zombie Mob, and I don't know, Crimson Land. An old cool game.
And in Crimson Land, weapons would drop during the game, right? Yeah, so you chose which weapon to go for, what to pick up next.
And it's also kind of like a roguelike, but here it's probably not quite a roguelike because your environment doesn't change dynamically. You have some presets, right? And you use them there, correct?
Aleksey, this is for you. I don't know what presets are.
Pieces of
In terms of what I didn't quite understand either. Level design, meaning your levels aren't static and you essentially assemble them carefully from separate pieces.
No, I just sketched the level on paper, then put it together with assets, and that's basically it, more or less, so that the paths are nice. You can walk in a loop, no dead ends. Basically, essentially, in essence.
That's what I'm talking about. I mean, Crimson Land is a roguelike. So a roguelike is when the level is generated. So yours isn't a roguelike. However, there are some small inaccuracies in the level design. They're related to the environment. And the idea is this. So imagine little fences, right? Little fences. Behind the little fences, you've got some small things, but I keep tripping over them. On one hand, it's indeed logical and clear why this was done, right? So that the next time I'm surrounded by a crowd of mobs, I think I'm going to escape. But unexpectedly, I don't. And suddenly I die, respawn, generate, check out the reward and all that stuff without any warning, right? But this doesn't make me love the developer anymore. And it seems that if I just died without getting caught on that thing, realizing my mistake, first, I would be more loyal to the developers. And second, I might have checked out the reward. So I would somehow address these small moments. I would try to watch somehow.
Do you mean to put in more massive obstacles?
No.
Where it seems like you can actually run, but in fact you really can't. You can't run through there at all. Why? Are they too small?
There are some fences where there's something unfortunately stuck at the bottom, like this, and I'm really running and just get very caught on it a few times. And I can't get through, so I would clean up those spots a little bit.
Well, in that sense, got it.
I also want to disagree with Dima on one point. I really very much liked the club, actually, indeed. I really liked it very much because I had a lot of fun and enjoyment. When you were discussing, Dima was talking about the club. I hadn't gotten it in the game yet, but in my mind, I had this strange. So in this case, the club should knock enemies back. I get the club, I start hitting them, and they get knocked back and fall. That's literally exactly what I expected. That's cool. The club is awesome. The only thing, like, next, games of this kind. I also slightly disagree about the target audience. When we talk about Archero, we shouldn't forget that it's Habby. How they purchase, we don't know. Who they are, I don't know. Define this project as a project for, I don't know, 14, 16-year-old boys, about 80%. So I wouldn't steer it towards the 30-year-old. There will be a 30.
Let me just help you a little bit, perhaps by throwing in this question. And how many people exactly aged 10, 18 know what a TV is?
I think everyone does. The question is how the TV is portrayed, the format of presentation. I had a TV like that, I don't know, 30 years ago, right? The concept of indeed presenting through a TV is pretty cool. Moreover, if instead of these squares there was a plasma or something modern and ultra thin, it probably wouldn't be as planned and cool. That's why I would...
How old are you, please? Can you just give me a rough idea so I understand?
Yeah, exactly 40.
So you like the bat and the TV, I guess. Perhaps a lot, I assume.
Yeah.
Get caught.
No, well, yes, but it's important. The thing is, I actually did indeed see the bat very late, for one. Secondly, the question is different. I'm not the target audience for this project. Now, I've analyzed this project, well, because we're doing an analysis and because I've analyzed it. So if I were honestly and personally asked whether I would definitely play this project, I would say no, I wouldn't. So in relation to me, it's a mistake. I wouldn't play it, not because of him, wouldn't play it.
I can throw in a bit of statistics for you.
Of course, I'd be glad to.
We once recruited different guys from Google. Among them were payers. Payers are indeed the players who pay. Oh, and also organic. So basically, our target audience is specifically between the ages of 35 and 55 years old. I'm mentioning these numbers because these people are the most profitable to acquire, and in their lifetime, they stay in the game about twice as long as people who fall into the current category under 16.
Great, thanks for the answer. But logically, there's probably a bit of a difference here. First, when I spoke about the target audience, I mentioned the columns, probably the distribution. So what's the distribution in the project? So if we take 100% of the users, how many of those really great ones are there? Like 10%?
No, approximately 60.
60. Interesting then.
Then you didn't need to talk to us at all, honestly. Buy them, yeah, absolutely use them and make money.
Well, they're very expensive indeed, but they're also higher up.
They pay pretty well.
Well, there's probably some conversion there.
I looked carefully at the statistics, and you are indeed right. The katana was bought only 11 times. Just a random number from Royal Gun 16. Flamethrower 23. So the flamethrower was bought twice as much as the katana.
That's not statistically significant conversions here and there. So if we had at least 100 purchases of each item, we could say that it's at least statistically significant. It could have just been some kind of spike, but overall, well, I'll be glad if this trend continues and maybe something will likely be done with the statistics. Here's an interesting point. When I was making the same thing, well, the same portrait, the only difference was that I didn't have a square level. I had a tunnel one, a tunnel level with a bit. I added an ability button. So I indeed had several different characters. Each character had a different ability. For example, one guy had an ability, he presses it and he duplicates himself, like his shadow character. He draws the monster's aggression, shoots back a little, and during this time you can...
What's the reason for adding a button? Why doesn't he do it himself, like every 15 seconds?
And, well, here's the next question. There are two abilities. There are active and passive ones.
Well, in general, some overarching thought on why it's typically worth making an ability active, usually, often.
Yes.
I understand. If you're selling it and it runs out, then perhaps it indeed makes sense to add such an ability. But if it doesn't in fact become depleted, it's not actually a consumable at all, then maybe adding another button is not what's needed.
To each their own, I can explain my reasoning. I actually felt the following, well, even in this project, I caught myself having similar thoughts. It gets boring to keep constantly retreating and running away all the time. I want a bit more extra interaction with the screen because all my design behavior patterns are getting reduced. Well, there I retreat. So I'm always retreating, retreating, retreating. And at some point, you just really want some variety in the gameplay. Meanwhile, my ability filled up based on the damage dealt, right? So you need to put in a little bit of extra effort to fill it up, and then you activate that result. And with this result, indeed, this activation, you choose the moment yourself. Usually, well, I focused on the idea that the ability should save you in some critical moment because a passive with a 15-second cooldown might activate when A, you don't need it, or B, you really need it, but it doesn't activate. And with the button, you filled and activated it yourself. But very importantly, this was my personal experiment in that project because I haven't seen many similar things.
How did you exactly press that button?
So I had a joystick here, with my finger, right? Click pressed, that's it. This happened roughly every 20 seconds or thereabouts.
In the cucumber, there's still essentially a button for the active skill evasion maneuver, which regenerates after a while. This is needed so that in a tight situation when you can't get out, you can take control and get out yourself. So you need some kind of active skill. An active skill is only needed when you can use it at a convenient time for yourself. So basically, it's not automatic. That's literally what I'm talking about.
And regarding sales, well, hypothetically, let's say, you can somehow level it up too. So hypothetically, this skill will probably sell worse than everything else because it's some kind of extra. It's not a weapon, not even an item. I assume the purchasing distribution is as follows. First, they buy weapons. Second, they buy various items, such as a protective cloak. And third, they will buy some kind of ability. So in terms of monetization, specifically, I don't think it will have a super strong impact, perhaps around 2% of in-app revenue.
Can I just chip in my 2 cents on how to maybe improve the monetization of the katana a bit, perhaps? It's simple. Just easily make a lightsaber instead of a katana in different colors. If I cut someone with a lightsaber, at the very least, a limb should fall off.
Well, yeah, and add Luke to the location.
Basson, I am your father. No, well, actually, a lightsaber is not a patented thing by Lucas. If we're talking about sales, you see, I am quite certain that a lightsaber would sell much better than a katana.
Why are we saying lightsaber? A saber is a sword.
Yeah, that's what it's called. Well, in English, it's lightsaber.
We'll definitely call it light sword, and there'll be nothing to complain about.
And we'll patent it.
All right, we're just to make sure everything is correct. Submitting the application now.
Those are my considerations and insights. So if you have another project, I'll prepare better, analyze monetization, energy, and everything else. In our next meeting, we should definitely take a closer look at the detailed analytics because everything that we have discussed up to this point is merely our subjective opinion, since we currently do not possess any concrete data to support our claims. But that's what these analyses are for.
I have some data, like the first day retention is 31%, playtime, engagement is 1 hour and 40 minutes. This is exactly what we currently have for some closed cohort. We can certainly work with this and definitely squeeze something out of it. Perhaps we can talk about this later and separately in the meantime. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up here if possible. Fyodor, I'd like to hear your final feedback, please. Yeah, guys, thank you so much. Look at the kitty I drew. We can sell it. I think that's just when we write the sequel. First, we need to push this to a couple of million, then...
No, we simply need to make an ability button, you press it, and a satellite kitty appears and eats them. That's it. We're reaching our new target audience of cat lovers without alienating dog lovers.
Well, we actually had the idea to create pets, like the ones we saw somewhere, that just run around next to you and collect currency for you, which is actually a pretty good feature, plus it's cute. And the second pet, for example, could be something else that just gives off an aura next to you, or maybe heal you slowly, for example. It does something like a freeze for a while.
Archero has pets.
They add them.
A long time ago, they were added a couple of years back. There are different pets there, a whole bunch of them. You can even buy packs with a character and a pet. But look, they're useless there. In Pixel Gun 3D, there are pets too, and they're also useless. In Pixel Gun 3D, I think they likely make up 0.2% of the in-app revenue. Why am I speaking so confidently? I worked on this project.
Something like that. And there's no percentage. It's just about the pets, It's more like a funny joke, but what are you looking at selling? Emotes? And we run around with a girl. You can be a boy in a wheelchair, or even imagine being in someone else's shoes entirely. Yeah, I think that's more of an emote project, right? Something interesting. Monkey. And
cat dog, maybe.
Cat dog, that's really cool.
And look, it will immediately run to both sides of the location.
In the middle, you kind of need to add this thing, make it horizontal. That's how you capture it.
And with the ability button, it shrinks to shrink in size and reduce the size of all the mobs. Absolutely, absolutely.
Cool, thanks.